Hello and welcome to VGM Podcast Episode 1. My name is Edwin Garcia, and today we're going to be taking a look at the music in Metroid. Alright, so first official episode, very excited. It's going to be interesting to say the least. So, we'll do a really brief review of the actual game, just in case there's anyone listening who hasn't played any type of Metroid. The original Metroid is an NES game that was released in 1986. It's an extremely popular franchise that has 14 titles on the NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, DS, original Game Boy, Wii U, not sure about Wii U. I'm sure it's featured on Smash. But anyway, 14 titles on pretty much every Nintendo-related platform that's ever came out. Very popular series. And we are going to be focusing on the music. So here we go. The composer for Metroid was Hirokazu Tanaka. Now, I'm not sure if my pronunciation of that is 100% correct. I'm pretty comfortable. Tanaka. Now I'm sure it's correct. So it's Hirokazu Tanaka, and he was the in-house composer for Nintendo during the 8-bit and 16-bit era. He still does work here and there for Nintendo, so he's not completely gone, but he was the in-house composer, which essentially means he composed for a wide variety of music during that era. A few, just in case you're not sure where he's worked before, is obviously Metroid, Kid Icarus, Super Mario Land, Earthbound, Dr. Mario, and even still contributes music to the Pokemon series. So, very infamous composer for Nintendo, especially during the 80s and early 90s, but still relevant today. Now, I want to highlight just a couple of tracks from the Metroid NES series. So, I think it would be good for us to hear a few of them, and I can chime in on why I think they matter, why I think they're important, and why I think they work so well with the game. So, I'm going to play it for you now. I'm going to start with literally the title song. So as soon as you play the game, or before you even start really, title screen comes up, the music comes on, and then you can press start. So I'll play about a minute or so of it just in case you forgot what it sounds like or you've never heard it, and you can just get pretty much an impression on what it is. Okay, so here we go. That's, I think, enough to give you a taste of it. Cool. So, that's the title song, the title screen music that plays before you even press start on Metroid. Now, I think it still sounds good, even if you have no context and just kind of hear it. Sounds interesting. Sounds like, obviously, an 8-bit or at least 16-bit, depending on who the person is and what they think it sounds like music. But it definitely has that iconic sound. Kind of that tinny sound that you get off 8-bit music, off retro music. Obviously, that's part of the limitations the console had. So it's a style now, but at the time it was kind of a forced style. You couldn't have a full-out orchestra. You couldn't have, 16 tracks, a multi-track song like that. You were limited to the limitations of the console, and you maximized the sounds with what you had at the time, compared to now where there's not really too many limitations on what you can do soundtrack wise. So what makes that work? What makes it special? Or maybe why does it sound the way it sounds and create the emotions it creates? Now, from me playing Metroid and feeling Metroid, it's really about you're exploring like in isolation. There aren't too many NPCs. There are just characters and aliens that you attack, and you're a bounty hunter. And it's a very lonely kind of experience. It's a single player game. It's a game where, like I said, you don't have too many allies. You just kind of go into the terrain. And I think this will really show in the next theme we play. But I think right away it kind of gives you that sound, right? It's if you listen to the beginning again, it's very quiet. There's just two voices. There's a low bass, just a low bass droning on the bottom, and on top it's just a single melody. It's a triplet pattern, and then it's held out for, I believe, a half note. So it's dun 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 dun. So you're hearing that, and that fades away with that half note, and then the bottom is just droning, and that kind of gives you, there's movement and action on the top, but then it's held, and the bottom is just held. So it's giving you a pulse, it's giving you a beat, it's kind of marching along, even though it's in 4/4, not a 3/4 march, but it still kind of gives you that we're chugging along, and we're getting a little quick movement on top, and then we're holding it there. And then the fact that the melody is so high, it's really, really high, it kind of gives you that loneliness. Like it's very clear and it's very bright, but it's also very barren. It's just a triplet pattern, half note, and it just holds out there. So it kind of gives you that feeling like, oh, it's just, this is all it is, but it's interesting, and I'm captivated by it, right? And I really like after the introduction, which repeats, then we have a lot more movement, right? We have a quarter note melody, and it's just kind of going it feels much faster because we had triplets and half notes that held. So it feels like we're marching along a little bit more. And then it gets a little more active, and then it doesn't feel quite as, jarring. But even then, what's the bass doing? It's just holding out these long whole notes. I think after the first two measures after the introduction, it holds out even longer than that. Or that's in the intro. There's a few parts where it holds on even longer, or it's the same note repeated. So even though it's moving, it's not really moving. It's static and just repeating. So the bass is really establishing that, hey, we're just in this really big, long, chunking, slow action, and the melody is able to kind of move a little, so it doesn't feel like that necessarily. You might feel it, but you're not thinking about it. You're just thinking of, you hum the melody, right? You don't hum the bass. As people, we like high melodies. That's what we remember. So it's still giving us that feeling, and we can still sense that because we're still hearing it, even if we're not really paying attention to it. So I think that's really cool. And obviously the melody works. It's very catchy. A lot of reasons for that is, one, repetition. Everyone's played a lot of Metroid. A lot of these themes have been reimagined. So you already, if you're a gamer and you've played this franchise a lot, you kind of recognize it. So you feel at home. So the more you listen to it, it's kind of that whole, do you like it, or has it just been repeated so much that you also like it? I think it's a combination of both. I think it's just generally good. I think if you show someone who doesn't know this music or this franchise the music, they'll still like it. So I think it's a combination of it was good, and then it's been repeated so much that it's canon, and you appreciate it even more, and you really like it. And then, if you notice, after the introduction, a drum pattern starts. And I don't have much to say about the drum pattern, except it's really good. It keeps repeating its 3/4 notes, and then there's like a 16th note action, followed by a pickup, so it's like doon, 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 and then it repeats that pattern again. So it's really interesting. I just really like it. It was really tastefully done. It's really active. The drums were really light, though, so you have this big, low bass, and you have this really high melody, and then you have these short, quick little drum patterns, which I really like. They weren't big, because I think if they were big, they would drown out the bass. And actually, you have to really listen for those drums. They're tastefully done in a way where you might even kind of ignore or realize that, hey, there's like a really consistent drum pattern going on. So I like that as well about the track. And that's why I think it's a really great one for us to point out and talk about, because it's one that everyone will know as soon as they boot up the game, and it's so popular, and I think it works really well. So let's take a look at another track. So I'm going to do one more. Again, this is the first one, so we're going to learn what works together and what doesn't work, what you guys want to hear and don't want to hear. So I think another one will be enough so we can kind of get another perspective, a different track. But again, any comments, questions, concerns you have, really could use it on the comments as I learn what works, what doesn't work, what would be the best way to continue forward on the podcast. So we're going to go with Brinstar's theme. So let me pull it up right here so we can both listen to it. And then I'll give you my thoughts on that, what's going on, and how it works. All right, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, love that that theme. It's super exciting when you hear it and you're playing, and then obviously when you also add the sound effects when you're shooting and stuff like that, when you hear enemies getting hit and you're rolling, just those sounds also, I was just thinking about them, just hearing it again. That's the whole conditioning, right? Like I'm adding in the blips and the blops and the space shooty sounds because I've played that game so much and I've heard that music so much. In the context of in the game, that I'm adding extra positive feelings towards the track. But overall, I think it's still really good even just looking at the track. For example, it's really interesting. It actually starts with the bass line being a little more prominent. I believe the dynamic's just a little stronger. It's a little louder. You kind of hear the bass movement immediately. Even though there is a droning melody, the bass line's kind of a little more pronounced, which, I just found kind of interesting. Like I said a minute before, when you listen to music, you're usually thinking of the top melody. Here, you're kind of thinking of the low one at first, and then it switches to a more traditional way of listening, which is the top melody takes over. And it does that during the first big section after that little introduction bass line. It's just the top melody, and it moves really well, right? It's got more triplet patterns. Dun, 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 right? So you're kind of, that little movement's what really makes it interesting. You take those triplets out, it would be kind of boring. It would just be dun, dun, dun. It just wouldn't make any sense. Those triplet patterns kind of guide you, and as a composer, you have a point, then you have another point. You have phrase ideas that you want to connect, and that little triplet pattern is kind of like the bridge that connects it. It's like, I want to go from here to here, but that's boring. So how can I make it interesting? It's like, I'll add these triplet patterns, and it'll keep them interested while I connect to the different tones that I want to get to. So I find that to be really good, and it works really well because not only are you making connections to get to where you really want to go, you keep me interested in the way that you're doing that. So that's awesome. And then during the second half of that theme, it's kind of even. The bass gets a little more movement. There's not triplet patterns, but there's like running eighth note lines that work really good, and there's a lot of dotted rhythms, dotted quarter notes that are being active, almost acting like drums, even though there are drums in there. It's kind of moving around and giving you a groove, but it's kind of a little louder. So you hear that, so you kind of hear both, and they're kind of working together, and it's kind of just one idea, even though it's obviously two different rhythms doing two different things, but they work together so well that your brain just kind of melts into like one thing. You can probably hum both at the same time, as much as you can anyway, and connect them together. And that's really a great job by the composer, because you want people to notice everything you're doing, but you're probably doing a few things. Kind of hard for everyone to notice everything. I think during that second half of the theme, that really gets accomplished. Everything, I hear everything, and I feel like I notice everything. I don't have to focus on it. It's just kind of melting in together, and it all just really works well. So yeah, that's Metroid's Brinstar theme, again by composer Tanaka. And yeah, I think it's a really great piece. One thing I wanted to mention again is that the exploration and the isolation in Metroid is felt by the music a lot, and I think especially the title track kind of gives you that feeling so much, and so much more of the music has, I think, those two types of themes. There's the kind of upbeat, active movement that makes you feel like I'm an explorer. I'm a bounty hunter just looking for my next target and doing my job. And that's what Brinstar's theme does to me. It makes me feel like, we're on an adventure and on a battle, and I'm working towards that. And other tracks like Metroid's title song, it makes you feel alone and kind of dark, and it's like not grim, but just kind of lonely. And like I said, the experience in the game's kind of lonely in a good way, but lonely nonetheless. So I think for me, most Metroid music kind of falls into those two categories. It's either bringing out the loneliness and the darkness that can be the game. In a game that's also very dark, right? You're in space, it's very black. All of them are pretty much like that. I don't think there's a bright, Metroid game or even really level. It's always like that, very dark tones. So the music reflects that. And then there's kind of the yang to the yin there, where we have the moments where it's very kind of upbeat feeling. So you feel like you're exploring and you're on an adventure, on a quest, on an expedition, and you're just kind of hunting throughout space as a bounty hunter, as Samus is. So that's pretty much all I have on Metroid. Is our first episode here, the VGM podcast episode 1. I want to wrap up before I finish. I want to thank you for listening. This was really fun. It's been really exciting going through these video games again, playing them a bit, listening to the soundtracks again, and picking out a few highlights. If you have any ideas for the upcoming podcast, songs you want me to focus on, games you want me to focus on, franchises you want me to focus on, very much appreciated. I'm making a list right now. I'm trying to also make them a little theme-based, not necessarily every month I want to do a podcast, and obviously I want it to be as kind of appropriate for the season as possible. So, for example, I picked Metroid because I feel like it's not Halloween, but it has that darkness and creepiness that Halloween has, or at least is associated with. I don't really have anything for November. I'm in the States, so I don't think we have a Thanksgiving game. So I'm not sure what I'll pick for that. I'm still thinking about it. Christmas, there are a couple things I'm thinking of. Games that were released in December, games that have kind of a Christmas theme. There are quite a few, even if you don't think there are. So I have a few ideas. And after that, obviously, we're in 2019. And there's a lot of games that can go on, but I would love to hear from the community as to what you're interested in. So if you have an idea for a game, if you have an idea for a track that you want me to focus on, let me know. Let me know in the comments on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm E Plays Courts. That's the letter E Plays Courts. I'll put up a little icon here so you can see it, just in case you missed that. DM me, message me, tweet at me. I'm very accessible on all 3 platforms, so if you have an idea, obviously in the YouTube comments would be great, because I'm definitely checking those, as that's where this video is uploaded on. So yeah, let me know what ideas you have, and I'd love to share them. I'm pretty much open to anything, as long as I think I can talk well about it, and I'm pretty sure if I know the music and I have time to research it, I can't see why I wouldn't be able to talk about it. The other thing is also I would like to do some collaborations, so if you're listening to this and you feel like you could add to the conversation and you literally want to be a guest, let me know. I'm open to talking to composers. I'm open to talking to fans, people who just know the music. I do want you to know it enough to feel like you can express it a little bit. You saw my style. It's not 100% theory, but I do know what the theory behind the music is. I do have the sheet music with me, so make sure you can kind of handle that a little bit. I want to get past the emotions a little bit and a little bit into the technical reasons why it sounds the way it does. But as long as you can do that a decent amount, I'd love to have you on and love to talk to more people about it, to kind of stir the pot. That's the whole point of this podcast, to kind of go a little deeper into the music, go a little deeper into what's happening in the music in our video games. And if we can do that as a team, as a collaboration, as a community, that's only enhancing it for everyone, so we can all learn a little bit more about video game music and what goes on it. So that's it for now. Make sure you like, subscribe. Like I said, episode 1, we had episode 0, so if you haven't checked that out, I still recommend that as a video to watch, because it kind of explains the format here, what we're doing, and it can kind of give you a little bit more background as to how this podcast is going to move forward, or how it's at least planned to move forward as we move along here into the end of 2018 and the future with 2019. So that's it for now. It's been fun. Don't forget, like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.